Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Welcome to this course called History and Principles of Theleme. In this course, first I will attempt to shed light to the history as to where Aleister Crowley got his idea for Theleme from. Then we are going into the practice. We're going to look at certain examples which we can use in our daily life. And also we are going to look at how Crowleyanism and Theleme affected chaos magic. I also have to both admit and warn you that I have no idea what I'm doing. Well, this is my first podcast, so I'm probably going to and ah way too much, and I apologize for that. First of all, let's take a look at where the whole idea of the Abbey of Thelema comes from. In the late 1400s, somewhere around 1483 or 1494, a certain Francois Rabelais was born. He was a French Renaissance writer, physician, humanist, and a monk. He was historically regarded as the father of fantasy writing. He was a jester. He had really robust jokes, but that was kind of the point of jokes back at that time. And he definitely was the grandfather of modern Western literature. Rabelais became a novice of the Franciscan order and then later a friar. So we are talking about a monk. We're not talking about some sort of atheist, as some people seem to describe him. He was a Franciscan monk at first, but then the order was just too much for him, and he went and petitioned Clement VII, the Pope, and he gained permission to leave the Franciscans and enter the Benedictine order. Later, he left the monastery and studied medicine at the university. And in 1532, he moved to Lyon, one of the intellectual centers of France. From 1540, Rabelais became acquainted with a certain publisher, and he started publishing his own translations of Hippocrates, Galen, and Giovanni Mainardi. As a physician, he used his spare time to write and publish humorous pamphlets, which were critical of established authority and stressed his own perception of individual liberty. Now, let us not forget, he knew about authority from his monk days. Using his pseudonym Alcofribas Nasir, an anagram of François Rabelais, in 1532 he published his first book, Pantagruel. Now, this would become the first of the series, which was of 5 books, which became immensely important for later esoteric thought, as we will see. The story of Gargantua and Pantagruel follow 2 giants, Pantagruel the son and Gargantua the father. And this story contains 2 very specific images that later became very important. One was the Abbey of Thelema and its description, and the other was the Oracle of the Bottle. Today we are mainly going to talk about the Abbey of Thelema and the vision of the Abbey of Thelema. We find Rabelais' vision of the Abbey of Thelema in chapter 1, part 52 to 57. The whole idea about this part is that they just finished a war against a certain country, and Gargantua received aid from monks. And because of the help of these monks, he became ruler, and he, in turn, establishes a different sort of monkhood, which basically sets monks free. The theory is simple. Basically, people do bad and do evil things because they are not free. They have authority over them, and because of that authority, they rebel. Rabelais theorized that if people were to let completely free, they would actually turn into noble people and do only good, because they would have nothing to rebel against. And to this purpose, he decided to create the Abbey of Thelema as a perfect opposite to the monk convents of his time. The ideas were the following. Because in the convents of women men come not but underhand, privily, and by stealth, it was therefore enacted that in this house there shall be no women in case there be not men, nor men in case there be not women. Because both men and women that are received into religious orders after the expiring of their novitiate or probation year were constrained and forced perpetually to stay there all the days of their life, it was therefore ordered that all whatever men or women admitted within this abbey should have full leave to depart with peace and contentment whensoever it should seem good to them to do so. For that the religious men and women did ordinarily make 3 vows, to wit, those of chastity, poverty, and obedience, it was therefore constituted and appointed that in this convent they might be honorably married, that they might be rich, and live at liberty. In regard of the legitimate time of the persons to be initiated, and years under and above which they were not capable of reception, the women were to be admitted from 10 till 15, and the men from 12 till 18. So we can see that he was completely turning the whole idea of monkhood around and turning it into something of liberty. Now, of course, this was very beautiful to those Enlightenment era people who picked up on it, and then of course later the occult Renaissance was very enthusiastic about this idea as well. Now, how did Francois Rabelais imagine the life of these monks and nuns? All their life was spent not in laws, statutes, or rules, but according to their own free will and pleasure. They rose out of their beds when they thought good. They did eat, drink, labor, sleep, when they had a mind to it, and were disposed for it. None did awake them, none did offer to constrain them to eat, drink, nor to do any other thing, for so had Gargantua established it. In all their rule and strictest tie of their order there was but this one clause to be observed: do what thou wilt. Because men that are free, well-born, well-bred, and conversant in honest companies, have naturally an instinct and spur that prompteth them unto virtuous actions, and withdraws them from vice, which is called honour. Those same men, when by base subjection and constraint they are brought under and kept down, turn aside from that noble disposition by which they were formerly inclined to virtue, to shake off and break that bond of servitude wherein they are so tyrannously enslaved. For it is agreeable with the nature of man to long after things forbidden, and to desire what is denied us. So this was the basis upon which Rabelais built his Abbey of Thelema, and this became the basis upon which Sir Francis Dashwood founded his Hellfire Club, and Sir Aleister Crowley founded his own Thelemic school of thought. Now let's just discuss this idea for a second. Here we have totally free people, or the thought of totally free people in the 1500s. What is happening at that time? In 1494, Francis I becomes the French king. Now, he was a revolutionary thinker and he was a patron of the arts. He actually triggered the French Renaissance by attracting a lot of Italian painters and artists in general. Now, this was the time when Martin Luther began his own Protestant movement, which the king actually started to view as a plot against himself, which of course made him a little bit irritable and led to him persecuting, jailing, and sometimes executing the followers of Luther. Sometimes whole villages disappeared overnight because of that. However, the thought was there. There was a new form of religious freedom opening up. And this created polemy, and polemy is always good for artists because they can actually work that polemy into their own works of art. Rabelais believed in freedom. Rabelais believed in the fact that people are inherently good. This is a very Platonic thought, though. Plato said that people are generally inherently good, and only ignorance leads them to bad things, to doing evil deeds. Now, Rabelais established that this can be dealt with by being well bred and being well educated. And from that point on, if we remove that constriction that is put upon all the people, people will become good. And this was the idea that was taken over by later thinkers. I think this will be enough for now. And next time we are going to explore a bit more about Rabelais' work, especially in the light of Sir Francis Dashwood and his Hellfire Club. See you next time. Love is the law, love under will. Somewhere by you,